Season 9 is already in trouble. I got good news regarding powers, very good news about the Nightmare Dungeon rework, and extremely concerning news as we're talking about class balance, nerfs, changes, and them ruining Overpower. Let's talk. First, Nightmare Dungeon rework and the Strongrooms. The Strongrooms are going to be micro dungeons inside of Nightmare Dungeons. You can imagine these strong rooms to be time-gated rooms where you have to kill as many minions as possible and do some events to get the most attunement and then banger loot. If you increase the torment tier, there's a higher chance for them to appear in Nightmare Dungeons. There seems to be a Nightmare Dungeon affix that guarantees a strong room. And if we upgrade our Wayfinder with the vials that we find, we also increase the ability to locate a strong room. As you navigate Nightmare Dungeons, look for your distinct flash and sound of a gateway. Then you'll be ambushed by monsters, you kill them, and you get a portal that teleports you into the strong room. And there'll be some strategy to it because you'll get these pillars, the test of lunatics, test of lure, test of efficiency, test of resistance, and frenzy. And these will influence how the strong room plays, how difficult it is, but also how much attunement you can then gain for even better loot. This is, by the way, happening on top of the Opticide gain that Nightmare Dungeons anyways give you. And the strong rooms are really important for the Escalating Nightmares, because Escalating Nightmares can only be opened with an Escalating Nightmare Sigil. But what are the nightmares now? They're a new endgame activity where you chain 3 Nightmare Dungeons into each other. So you finish one, then go to the next, and at the end, you'll have a big boss fight. And that one will be Asterith. You remember Asterith from the campaign? Yep. You cannot reach this guy like a lair boss only through Nightmare Dungeon Escalation. The Nightmare Dungeon Escalation sigils only drop in the strong rooms. You see the gameplay loop. The interesting part is that during the Nightmare Dungeon Escalation, there can also be strong rooms, which then give you more sigils. So technically, if you wanted to, for farming Opticide, like 30 minutes or an hour, you could spend your time only in Nightmare Dungeon Escalations, doing them bop in a row, which you anyways want to do for all the Horadric materials to upgrade your powers. We haven't even talked about powers yet. And before you ask if these activities are worth it, we have loot updates in general. The drop chance of legendary runes are slightly increased. Lair boss have additional small chance of dropping a legendary rune, and all Undercity runs now reward at least 1 rune. While in the Undercity, all the tributes are buffed, and you receive always 1 rune per Undercity run. And in general, legendary loot drops now scale with Torment tier. If I do Torment 1, less, Torment 4, way more. As it should have been. So if I then do Torment 4, Nightmare Escalations, and we beat Asterith, we should be bathing in loot. This Nightmare Dungeon content is also meant to stay. This is a forever change, not just for this season. And in order to make Nightmare Dungeons even more interesting, they changed the affixes on sigils. For example, you could get a Horadric Gem Reserve, where then around the Nightmare Dungeon, you'll everywhere be able to find bonus gem fragments, or an Equipment Delve that's dropping bonus stuff, plus then the Nightmare Dungeon Escalation Sigil can have 3 of those. It has Strongroom, Treasure Breach, and Vial Reserve. Treasure Breach, by the way, means that there are tons of goblins in the Nightmare Dungeon. Boom. And then there's something called Forgotten Wisdom as well, which just will have experience globes spawn around the breach. Quite intriguing. Nightmare Dungeons really more interesting. Looking at them, seeing a yellow one, cool. And this gets combined with the new spells. No worries, we'll get to the bad news. But first, I want to shower you with the good ones. On the right side, you can see the overlay. There are 30 possible combinations. First, we'll look at the bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is where you put your catalyst. Your catalyst will be a spell that in this position is bound to one of your skills. For example, it's now in 6. Whenever you cast a meteor, you will trigger your Horadric spell, but the spell itself has an internal cooldown. For example, we have Astral Magic Celestial Surge. Awaken an oracular rune that pulls in all surrounding enemies, and a torrent of stars falls then randomly striking them. This has a cooldown of 15 seconds and at rank 20, 11.2 seconds. This means that every 11.2 seconds, as you use your meteor, there will be this starfall happening. You can reduce this even further, and you can augment it further. And then you get the globes here. These are the infusions. They go into the middle. The infusion will change the element of your spell and the elements of all your skills as well sometimes. We got burning, shadow, ice, poison, and lightning. And then last but not least, you have the Arcana. Legendary Arcana, Rare Arcana, and Magic Arcana. These Arcana slot into these 3 points, and they're meant as buffs to your power, range increase, and so on. Imagine now we have the Celestial Surge happening, okay? We're shooting these stars out, they're landing on the ground, they're pulling things together. You could also form an Astral Pillar that now taunts everyone for 3 seconds, has a 7-second cooldown until you make a new one. Minion Necro is going to love that. This is, for example, the spell called Cosmic Anomaly, where you summon anomalies around you and they stay like summons and they shoot out bolts. Then we'll add infusions to them. These incantations imbue your catalyst with power and magic. The Smoldering Ember, this is the fire one, for example. Your spell catalyst now deals fire or burning damage. If you choose the summons, they all shoot out fire now. As a bonus, it destroys enemy structure and has a 10% chance to ignite the ground beneath. Enemy structure, in this case, means if you have a wall or opponent, you would destroy that. Intriguing. But the most important thing is, it says, while equipped, your fire damage bonus is equal to that of your highest damage type bonus. Which means, if I have 5,000 damage to cold and equip this catalyst, then I have also 5,000 damage to fire. And it says bonus, okay? So you'll have both damage types going crazy. Or the Nebulous Extract, which says, enemies hit by it deal 5 to 10% reduced damage. Okay, understands. And your spell catalyst is now corrupting damage. While equipped, your shadow damage bonus is equal to your highest damage bonus. If I can now scale blood damage, for example, immense. Damage while fortified, something, probably. And then make my shadow damage bonus equal to that. I could scale Blood Wave, which is a darkness skill as well, with the right aspect, to the moon, potentially. The same goes for the Glacial Nimbus and for the Corrosive Vapor. Also the Thunderous Particle. It's always your lightning damage bonus is equal to your other highest damage bonus, and your poison damage bonus is... You get the drift, right? We could do probably insane poison builds on something that's not even poison, technically. And then we have the Arcana. And by the way, all these things, the Arcanas, the spells, and all that stuff, you'll find them then in Nightmare Dungeons and with a seasonal quest to make sure that you stack up on these spells and everything. One Arcana is the Tendrilis Bundle. Lucky hit, damage from your catalyst has a chance to immobilize. Or the Tranquil Stone, invoking your catalyst grounds unstoppable. Cool, that's amazing. Shifting Power, your catalyst increases your movement speed. Aha. Luminous Gem, your catalyst will daze enemies. Invoke your catalyst ground stealth. Intriguing. Coming out of stealth, bonus damage, rogues. Invoking your catalyst grounds a barrier equal to 30% of your max life. Haha. We can fix shielding. We can do bonus stuns. After your catalyst activates, it grants resistance and maximum resistance for 10 seconds. You see the drift here. The magic ones are good to fix like some problems. The rare ones are gonna, for example, increase the size, apply vulnerable. They're gonna be a solution for everything. And there's 5 legendary ones. One says your catalyst gains a specialized freeze effect that lasts 3 seconds. Frigid Heart creates the following effects for each catalyst, because the legendary ones interact with each catalyst different. Quite cool. This is all good news so far. A good power system together with the Strongrooms having an interesting endgame grind that now instead of hogging the Inferno Hordes, you can do these Nightmare Dungeons Escalation and Torment 4 and see how interesting fun they get to then kill Astaroth and hope that his loot is truly next level. I mean, Astaroth at this point with the Nightmare Dungeon Escalation has to drop only greater affix items. Or at least tons of them. Because then it's really worth it to go through 3 Nightmare Dungeons, get all the Opticide, and a big banger amount of greater affix items, and it would kind of rival then the Infernal Hordes as an alternative to that. Now that's not the end. We're getting jewels, new jewels. You remember the Witch Tide, the Hell Tide, they gave something similar. These jewels always have big armor and elemental resistance. Then, for example, you gain primary core stat and maximum life. However, you'll be hunted by Sanctuary's darkest places by Jewel Guardians. Or the Seal of Power. While you have 2 or more Arcana from the School of Power equipped, movement speed and crit chance. Or, at the very end, your Catalyst deals 100% more damage. However, you lose control over your spellcraft, causing your Catalyst to inherit infusions randomly. Okay, and there's 15 different ones of them to buff your Catalyst, to buff your character, to have bonus fun. You deal 20% and take 10% more elemental damage. Why not, I guess? That bonus into your gem is bonus power. I do believe these are also meant to stay. It isn't specifically stated here, but if the changes to Nightmare Dungeons are already staying, you could assume that these are actually staying too, which I would like because it would just lighten up the gem game as it's quite poor, right? It's resistance, armor, or specific resistance. These jewels have recipes that you can find in Strongrooms and also the resources to then craft them in Strongrooms. That's why you want to do Nightmare Dungeons for Opticide and then Strongrooms anyways. Now a last pinch of good news and then we'll dive into despair and the bad news. We get new unique items, no new aspect, but we get tons of aspect reworks that will bring formerly useless aspects more into line to be useful. The Barbarian has Hooves of the Mountain God. These are meant to turn all your basic skill into cleave skills. Not just bash cleave. All your basic skills can cleave now, as long as you have maximum fury and then retain fury. For the druid, you get the Noxious Spinebreaker, that's a 2-handed weapon, and it will turn Pulverize into a poison puddle creation device. Poison Overpower Pulverize Druid. It sounds fun. The Necromancer gets the Hand of Nas. Those are gloves, and they will sacrifice all your other minions to get more skeleton mages, and if they attack 25 times, they're going to turn into skeletal archmages. Kinda cool. Rogue is super disappointing. They have the Death Mask. The Death Mask turned Flurry into a life-draining, more attack speed having shenanigan. I checked the creator Discord on Rogues. They're writing. Sorceress has a new amulet, the Phidian Iris. This makes Hydras be big super Hydras. You only get 3, they're bigger, and it gives you the inherent bonus Hydra. Hope we can get bonus Hydra heads somewhere else. And for each Hydra head, you deal 100% bonus damage. That's already 200% bonus damage to the Hydra with the 5-headed one. And I hope we can make like 7, 9-headed ones too. That would be really cool. I would love that. And for the Spiritborn, we get Pans, the Balazan's Max Ladle. That's totally pronounced correctly. And they will have your Thorns damage, poison, outwards, multiplicative stacking. Where Thorns builds were anyways interesting with the Rock Splitter basic attack, and basic attacks are wholesale being buffed. Kinda cool. Now to the sadness, and we'll start with a big one. They're going to reduce the Overpower damage formula. And it should net in Overpower dealing 80% less damage. They said, let's imagine Overpower does 1,000 damage bonus right now. That will be down to a 200% damage bonus. So my Bloodwave dealing 150 billion damage is getting then 80% less damage. Okay? So already shaving off 120 billion. We're going to be sitting at 30 billion instead. Okay, sure. I mean, 30 billion still sounds good, right? We're breaking the math over the knee here. But Overpower is being significantly nerfed. That's not the only thing though. Everything Overpower related is being nerfed for every class. On the Necro, for example, Rathmas Vigor, the key passive, is doing 20% less Overpower damage. Then Bloodbath, the 1 Paragon node on Necro, is doing another 60% less Overpower damage. So that's another 80% Overpower damage gone. Rogue in general is being, well, neutered death trap wise. And all of this together, yeah, I mean, if I take away 80% power on Overpower builds, how are people going to clear Torment 4 bosses? Sorcerer, Overpower, Lightning Spear. Barbarian is actually full crit because it's overscaling with finality, but they're nerfing Earthquake, so Barbarian also. Necromancer, Bloodwave, Bone Spear. Rogue, Death Trap. Druid, Overpower Cataclysm, getting severely nerfed. Spiritborn, also Overpower. Everything right now on the top is Overpower. But the thing is, even at the bottom, even my Pit 75 builds, Pit 80, Pit 85 builds, they're also using Overpower. And if I'm barely able to clear Pit 85 with the 12 out of 12 Masterwork maxed out build, and they actually decide to now nerf the Overpower formula and everything stays the same HP. I know Overpower is annoying that you have to use it, but if you trash it and give us nothing else, what are we going to do then? What are we left with? That's what the PTR has to show. Right now, I'm a bit concerned, especially a second update says that all our key passives, the key passives you have, are damage capped now. They'll try to bring them down that they don't give you more than 75% bonus damage. Some can go up to 200, 300, 400, even thousands of damage. They want to bring them all in line, but that also reduces the maximum power. And what do we get to make up for that? Our basic skills do more damage. But what do we get because our basic skills do more damage? Well, everything that scales our basic skills is nerfed. The Shot of Arathiel, 50% less damage. The Pain Gorgeous Gauntlet, 75% less damage. The Aspect of Moonrise, that every basic attack build plays, 40% less damage. And the Aspect of Adaptability is 40% less damage that you can technically scale if you have more max resource, but who scales max resource? With the basic attack build. It might still be a net gain. We'll have to play the PTR. But so far, all the nerfs are bringing down player power. All the powerful builds are being trashed. And we're not getting anything for it but the Horadric powers. Maybe these spells that we're getting all the way up here, maybe these do so much damage to make up for it. But if the player power is wholesale getting reduced and Torment 4 stays the same difficult, I hear constantly from people they still can't clear Torment for Belial. What as soon as the powers are gone, what's going to happen then? I don't want to be all doom and gloom. That's what we have the PTR there for, to now test these things. I'm going to right away make a Bloodwave Necro. Even my minion Necro relies on Overpower. I'm going to make all these builds and then test if Overpower is truly now at a level where it's just sadness. If it's even worth it to invest in Overpower. It will be a multiplier. So if you then crit Overpower, it's going to be great. But it's going to be less great. So you're going to do the same thing as before, but you're instantly dealing less damage. Ruining the power fantasy, Blizzard. Congratulations. Now I want to say there are some good things here, because they are reworking unused aspects. Ossified Essence, no one used that anymore in the Necro. It used to give you 0.5% increased damage per bonus point of Essence you have. Now this is kept at 100%, which sounds bad, but at the same time you get 50% essence generation. They're really doing a path over a lot of aspects that we have in the game that are not being used. They're kind of useless, and they're trying to make them interesting again. Aspect of the Swelling Curse. If you use Bone Spirit, it used to give you bonus essence. It was okay, but not really good. But now it says your bone skills now deal shadow damage instead of physical, so you can scale bone skills with shadow damage. That's an actual interesting change. If that then works into the new reality of less damage, we'll see. It's just cool to see that something like Plunging Darkness, which makes a Pool of Blight into a Bone Prison, and no one used this. No one used this. Now increases your Blight damage by 60% while Bone Prison is active. So a Shadow build will actually want to play this, right? Because your Bone Prison now still spawns a Pool of Blight, but it also increases your actual Blight damage, and Blight damage is what you would like to scale. More unused things finally have a place. If you're then going to use them, maybe not. Maybe you're still never going to use these. At least they're trying to make things work. They want aspects to have a home. That being said, though, the changes are mostly nerfs. For example, Death Trap has a pants called Eye in the Dark that used to have your Death Trap rearm and do 150% damage. This is changed now to 200% damage, but only every 10 seconds. Death Trap is putting out how many? 500 Death Traps per minute, and 6 of those in a minute are going to be empowered of your 500. Also, your Rogue used to get 75 bonus damage if they casted Subterfuge before a Death Trap. That was nice because you could hold down the Death Trap spam and then also spam Concealment. But they changed that to casting Mobility or Subterfuge skill increases your damage by 30% for 10 seconds. Technically, this sounds nice because it's a 30% increase for a whole of 10 seconds. But practically, I could spam Concealment so much that I always get the 75% bonus damage. It feels like, for some reason, that they wholesale want to neuter damage, the top end damage, but they're not making the game easier. And a lot of people will struggle even more in Torment 4. We'll see in the PTR. Good thing is, loot updates, Whisper caches now give more of everything. More materials, more gold, more everything. Literally, more gems, all of it. And the crafted caches from the jeweler and from the blacksmith have more items than ever in there. First part was actually a big W, with the powers, with the strong rooms and all of it. But the nerfs are really a kick in the face and seemed absolutely tone deaf. I wanted them to lift all builds from the bottom up to the level of what we have here right now. Maybe Overpower might be annoying to some, but it wasn't super hurting the game as we don't have crazy outliers, and it creates a fun that if you go for Overpower, you have a power fantasy for a lot of damage. And if you make it work, it feels great. What do you think? Tell me in the comments below. I'd like to see your opinions. I'd like to hear what you have to say, how you feel about these strong rooms, the overall changes to the game, if you're actually excited for it. I'm personally looking forward to spamming Nightmare Dungeons again, as I really hated Nightmare Dungeons. And these strong rooms remind me of the vaults. Season 3 vault end rooms. They were the greatest fun I've had in Diablo 4. Now, if you're still enjoying Season 8, here's some amazing Season 8 builds for you. And tell me in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching. Have a great, fantastic day.